Welcome to the deep dive. Look, if you've ever tried to keep up with information security and privacy, you know it's well. It feels like a massive, ever-expanding universe.
Oh, absolutely. It's just enormous domains, right? And you've got this constant stream of laws, regulations, guidance, best practices coming from, well, everywhere.
Exactly. Government, industry, trying to stay on top of it all. Honestly, it feels almost impossible sometimes.
It really does. Even for the pros, CISOs, chief privacy officers, it's just relentless. The sheer amount of information, sometimes it overlaps, sometimes it even seems contradictory.
Finding quick, solid answers can be really tough.
Yeah.
And that's basically our mission today. We want to give you a shortcut, a way to get well-informed without drowning in all the details. We've pulled out the really key stuff from a great source, Information Security and Privacy Quick Reference, the Essential Handbook.
That handbook's great. Really practical.
Right. Our goal isn't an encyclopedia, though. It's more like the core info, the fundamentals you might actually use day to day or, need handy.
And something that handbook points out right away, which I think is crucial, is this idea that security, it's a journey. It's not some finish line you cross.
That's such a key point, isn't it? It's not a process that just ends, because things are always changing.
Always. Security issues evolve constantly. You've got new technology rolling out, users doing different things with it.
And the adversaries, well, they're not exactly sitting still, are they? Always finding new angles, new exploits. What worked yesterday might just not cut it tomorrow. It's dynamic.
Which, leads to the obvious question.
Yeah.
If it's this ongoing journey, where do you even start? Where's the foundation?
Exactly. And that's where we need to begin today, right? With those foundational building blocks, the absolute core principles, the bedrock.
And for that, we really have to start with what most people learn first. The CIA triad. You hear it everywhere in security.
Yeah, the CIA triad. Confidentiality, integrity, and availability. It sounds simple, but these three things, they are the pillars for protecting pretty much any data or system. They're the main goals. Okay, let's break it down then. Confidentiality first. It's more than just keeping secrets,
Well,
right?
definitely. It's about making sure data or objects or resources are kept secret. Yeah. But it's also about minimizing unauthorized access. And here's something interesting. It's not just the content.
What do you mean?
Well, metadata. Things like who you talk to, when, how often, even the size of files you sent. Leaking that kind of stuff, that can be a huge confidentiality breach all on its own.
Ah, I see. Even without reading the message, you can learn a lot. Patterns, relationships.
Exactly. Sensitive activities. So countermeasures. Obviously, encryption is huge.
Right.
But you also need really strict access controls. Strong authentication. You need to classify your data, figure out how sensitive different pieces are.
So you know what needs the most protection.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And that involves concepts like discretion, who gets to decide what info they share, or criticality, what absolutely cannot leak because the damage would be immense. Then you have things like seclusion, isolating data on a separate network, maybe, or isolation within a system so it's harder to get to. And don't forget training people. Human error is a big factor.
Oh, absolutely. People are often the weak link, unfortunately. Okay, so if confidentiality is the lock, integrity is making sure what's inside the lockbox is right. Let's dig into the I.
Integrity. Yeah, this is all about reliability and correctness, making sure information isn't changed in ways it shouldn't be, whether that's unauthorized or just accidental.
So not just hackers changing bank balances.
Right, that's the classic malicious example. But it could also be, say, a software bug that messes up a database, or maybe a tiny error in how data gets processed that throws off a whole financial report or biases an AI model.
So it's about the data being accurate and the systems working as intended.
Exactly. You've got data integrity as the data accurate. System integrity, does the system do what it's supposed to do reliably? And process integrity, do operations run correctly, step by step? Like processing financial transactions, you need to ensure no steps get skipped or fiddled with.
Makes sense. Okay, last one. A, for availability. This seems straightforward, making sure stuff is accessible.
Pretty much, yeah. Availability ensures that the people who are supposed to have access can get to the data and resources when they need them without interruption. But, it's not just about uptime percentage.
How so?
It's about impact. Like a retail website going down on Black Friday. That's a big availability problem, obviously. But imagine a critical hospital system crashing during a major emergency. The impact there is, potentially life or death.
That really puts it in perspective. So it's about the consequences of it not being available.
Exactly. So measures to maintain it. Redundancy is key. Having backups ready to go.
Failover systems.
Yep, failover mechanisms so things switch automatically if the main system dies, load balancing to spread the work so nothing gets overwhelmed, and just good old regular maintenance patching updates. Even having a good incident response plan helps you get back up faster.
Okay, so CIA. Confidentiality, integrity, availability. That's the goal, the ideal state. So, what happens when things go wrong? When those protections fail? That's where this DID triad fits in. Is that it? Disclosure, alteration, destruction.
That's a perfect way to think about it. DID represents the direct failures, the consequences when CIA protections break down. It's a really practical way to look at potential incidents and what they actually do.
Okay, so disclosure obviously links to confidentiality failing. A data breach is the prime example, I guess.
That's the big one everyone thinks of, yeah. But disclosure is any time sensitive stuff gets accessed by someone unauthorized. It could be simpler, like accidentally emailing a confidential client list to the wrong person.
Ouch.
Or maybe a cloud storage bucket is misconfigured and suddenly internal documents are public. And then there's active data exfiltration attackers deliberately stealing info.
Yeah.
That's definitely disclosure.
Got it. And alteration, that's the consequence of an integrity failure.
Correct. Alteration is any unauthorized or just unintended change to information. Malicious stuff like, changing account balances, tampering with medical records.
Scary stuff.
Yeah. Or it could be accidental, like we talked about, that software bug creating errors, maybe even a power surge corrupting data. The point is, the information isn't what it's supposed to be anymore. It's incorrect.
Which leaves destruction. That maps to availability going down the drain.
Precisely. Destruction is when resources become damaged, unusable, or just plain inaccessible. This could be intentional, like a big DDoS attack flooding a server so nobody legit can use it.
Right.
Or it could be unintentional. A critical piece of hardware fails, maybe a fire or flood, or even someone just accidentally deleting a crucial database without a backup. End result's the same. You can't get to what you need. Operations grind to a halt.
So for someone listening, maybe trying to assess risks for their own stuff or their companies, how does thinking in terms of DE actually help?
Oh, it's incredibly useful for risk analysis and planning. It helps you ask much better, more targeted questions. Instead of just vaguely asking what are the risks, you can go through system by system. Like, okay, does this system hold sensitive info? What's the damage if it gets disclosed? Or if an attacker managed to alter the data in this application, what would that do? Financial damage, ruin our reputation. And if this service gets knocked offline, destroyed in terms of access, how badly does that hurt our ability to function?
Ah, I see. Framing it that way gives you a much clearer picture of the potential impact.
Exactly. It helps you prioritize where you need the strongest defenses.
That's a really practical framework.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got what we protect CIA and what happens when we fail DAD. The next logical piece is how we actually control access to prevent those failures, which must be the AAA model: authentication, authorization, accounting.
Yep, the AAA model is another one of those foundational security mechanisms.
Yeah.
Absolutely essential. These three pieces work together to make sure only the right people or things get in, do what they're allowed to do, and then we have a record.
Okay, so authentication first. That's like proving who you are, like my phone password.
That's a perfect example. Authentication is all about verifying identity. Is this user, this device, this application really who or what it claims to be?
How do you do that?
Very supposed. Something you know, like a password. Something you have, like a smart card, or your phone for that multi-factor authentication code. Or something you are, like a fingerprint or facial scan, biometrics. It's the absolute first line of defense. If you don't get authentication right, nothing else really matters.
Right, because you don't know who you're dealing with. Okay, so once you're authenticated, you're in. Then comes authorization. That's about what you can actually do once you're in.
Exactly right. Authentication proves who you are. Authorization determines your permissions. What are you allowed to access? What actions can you take? Can you read this file? Can you delete that record? Can you run this command?
And that's where things like roles come in.
Often, yes. You see role-based access control, RBAC, a lot. Your permissions are tied to your job. Role manager gets different access than intern. Or you might see attribute-based access control, ABAC, which is more granular.
How does ABAC work?
It uses specific attributes about the user, the resource they're trying to access, maybe even the environment, like the time of day or their location, to make much more nuanced decisions about access.
Ah, okay. Much more context-aware than just a fixed role. And the final A, accounting. sometimes called auditing. Sounds like keeping track of everything.
That's exactly what it is. Accounting or auditing means tracking what authenticated and authorized subjects do. Recording log entries, who access what, when, what changes were made. It's critical for accountability.
Why is that so important?
Well, for one, you can review logs to spot suspicious activity. It helps ensure you're complying with regulations, and crucially, if there's a security incident, those logs are your evidence trail. You can trace back what happened, hopefully to the source.
Okay, so this is where it all kind of clicks together for you, listening out there. Maybe you're not a CSO, but understanding these basics, CIA, DAD, AAA, it's like having the blueprint for protecting really any information system.
Absolutely. Whether you're thinking about your own online banking, or maybe your small business's customer data, or even just navigating security rules at a big company. These concepts are the common language. They give you a framework.
So when you turn on multi-factor authentication on your email, you're boosting authentication, which helps confidentiality.
Right. Or if, unfortunately your favorite online store has a data breach, you immediately know, okay, that's a disclosure event. That was a failure of their confidentiality controls.
And knowing this stuff helps you understand maybe slightly more complex things too, like you mentioned data remnants before. The idea that deleted files aren't always truly gone.
Exactly. You delete a file, you think it's gone. But without proper wiping, sanitization, bits of that data can still linger on the drive. That's data remnants. And that could be an availability issue if it stops you reusing the drive properly, or even a confidentiality issue if someone recovers it later. Understanding the basics helps you see why these more advanced topics matter.
It moves you beyond just knowing the terms to understanding the connections, right? How it all fits together in the bigger security picture.
Precisely. It helps you recognize that pretty much every click, every piece of data, every system you touch has some kind of security dimension. These triads, CIA, DAD, AAA, they're not just theory. They're the tools you use to think about risk, design protection, and understand what went wrong when things break, for your home network or for a global corporation.
So as we start to wrap this up, it really comes back to that first point, doesn't it? Information security and privacy, they really are journeys, not destinations. You've got to keep learning because the landscape just keeps shifting.
Constantly. But hopefully this deep dive gives you that solid core understanding. Moving beyond just the what to the why and the how, you see the direct line now, hopefully, between CIA and DAD, how failures lead to consequences.
Or maybe grasp why choosing between RBAC and ABAC for authorization isn't just technical detail, it's a strategic choice about controlling access. It gives you a framework, lets you ask smarter questions, make better choices about your own digital life.
And it helps frame that idea of due care and due diligence, right? Due care is taking those reasonable steps to protect information. Due diligence is that ongoing effort to understand the risks and keep improving those protections.
Okay, so here's something to think about as we finish. A little provocative thought for you. Given that security is always changing, always evolving, what single thing we talked about today, maybe CIA, DID, AAA, or a specific part of them, feels most critical for you to focus on learning more about for your own security journey? Why that one?
And maybe think about how you can apply those concepts of due care and due diligence. What reasonable, ongoing steps can you take starting now to better protect your own important information?
Yeah, really thinking about that can shift things from just knowing about security to actively doing something about it. All right, that's all the time we have for this deep dive. We hope you feel a bit more informed and maybe even a bit more curious now. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, everyone.